Welcome to the Notes to My Legal Self, AI Insights, where law and AI collide. Get ready to level up your legal game with us. We've got career advice, cutting-edge developments, mind-blowing legal tech, and more. Know someone making waves in the legal AI world? Nominate them, or even nominate yourself. We love courageous souls. And don't forget, we want to hear from you too. Ask questions, drop comments. Let's build a community of legal superheroes. But here's the deal. We're all about to have a blast. AI may be serious, but we're here to make it fun. So buckle up, get ready to power up, and let's embark on this exciting journey together. Now, let's introduce your fearless host, Olga Mack. Get ready to dive into the awesomeness of Notes to My Legal Self, AI Insights. Let's go.
Well, hello, everyone. Good to see you. We have a fantastic conversation, and I have two amazing guests with me. Kassi, Humira, welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. Please introduce yourself. Kassi, I will start with you.
Hello, I am Kassi Burns, and I'm an attorney with King & Spalding based in Fort Worth.
All right. And Humira, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Humira Noorestani, and I'm the founder of DigiCounsel and Humira Law.
Okay, fantastic. So today we're talking about AI audit, and partially we'll talk about AI mapping. We'll talk about related laws and where the industry is going. So let's start with sort of definition. What is AI audit?
Yeah, I can get into that. The reason I'm laughing is because just a little bit ago, I was asking the same question, right? So being an expert in AI audit is not something very common yet, right? But probably we're going to be more attuned with it in a year or so. So just to give you a definition, because we are lawyers and we like definitions, I would say an AI audit is a structured assessment of an AI system to ensure its algorithms, data, and operations meet specific standards such as appropriateness, transparency, accuracy, security, and compliance with regulations. And I think we can get into some of the regulations a little bit today as well.
All right, let's do it. I don't know, Kassi, if you have a supplemental material for that definition, or you want to talk a little bit about mapping, how that may be different?
Yeah, I think I've been talking about AI mapping some this week, and I know we have separately and individually. AI mapping, is a great start to AI audits. We don't really know the full scope of AI audits and what that'll totally mean, but just knowing where all of your AI systems are, how they're being used, potential risk, just getting that catalog of systems puts you in a good state to be able to do AI audits once you have a little bit more information.
I love that. So maybe let's talk about when a company should consider what is an event, what is a trigger for doing AI audit. Humira?
Yeah, that's a really good word, trigger. I think that there could be an event that actually triggers it, right? Maybe there's some sort of security breach or something that happened, but I think that, it could really happen in sort of different stages, right? Let me think. I guess the question is, when do we conduct an AI audit, right? It can be conducted at various stages, typically in the context of law and legal technology. The various phases or stages for conducting the AI audit can be, if you look at it, maybe like the pre-deployment phase, perhaps the post-deployment phase. Maybe there's a regulatory requirement that triggers it, such as NY 144. Perhaps there's an incident like the cybersecurity breach that we talked about. And then maybe the annual or periodic reviews, maybe even through like mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah, multiple events that could be either legislatively mandated, compliance mandated, or just actually good, governance and responsible AI development mandated. You mentioned NYC 144. For those folks, who may not have heard of it, what is it and why is it important in the context of discussion of AI audits?
Yeah, and I hate to bring this up all the time, but the way I see sort of the regulatory environment for AI is kind of its predecessor when we were dealing with privacy law regulations, right? We first saw the GDPR and then other states trying to sort of mimic or adopt it or or asking themselves, how do we do it? And what is it going to look, because EU is very sort of strict and stringent to us American attorneys, but what is it going to look like? And then we have the CCPA in California. So I feel like this is kind of following a similar course in this realm. New York City 144, we can say, aims to ensure that the use of AEDTs remains fair and unbiased. It mandates an independent AI audit for the automated employment decision tools, and hiring and promotions are sort of at the heart of NYC 144. So just to kind of understand what it looks like, if an employer employs AEDTs for making employment decisions, they must take actual proactive measures to comply with the new regulations. So there's an independent bias audit. If your organization uses AEDTs, it's time to commission an independent bias audit, which is an examination of the tools on decision-making processes and shed light on any potential biases lurking within. And then there's also a requirement for transparent disclosure. So you have to provide a public summary of the bias audit results. By openly sharing this information, you demonstrate your commitment to fairness and accountability. You have to inform applicants and employees. Keep your applicants and employees informed about the use and functionality of AEDTs. Provide them with clear notice so that they are aware of the tools, which influences the decisions that are made in the hiring process. And that's kind of a recap. I'm not sure if you have anything else to add.
No, that's a really good recap. But this is a really clear law that mandates it. We don't have a lot of laws that clearly mandate it as much. But Kassi, I want to talk to you a little bit, shifting gears to NIST, because NIST is clearly preparing for this world of AI audits being a thing. So maybe you can, because I've seen a lot of posts that you have shared and in your newsletters, share a little bit about NIST, the framework, and how all of this may relate to audits or mapping, that what you discussed.
Yes, absolutely. So last January, NIST published an AI risk management framework, and it really is, at its core, it has two main sections. Part one gives an overview of some foundational information about AI systems. And then the second part covers four core pillars that companies can use to apply those foundational guidelines. And this is a voluntary thing. This isn't something that people have to comply by, but NIST just set this forth as a way to provide a roadmap and create some guidelines for the broader group of people using AI in their everyday lives. And if you look at the four core elements to the NIST AI risk management framework, they cover four areas. One is governance, mapping, which you kind of already talked about, measurement, and management. So, we're not going to drill into the details here, but I would recommend, if anyone's out there thinking, I work for a company, we have a lot of AI systems, we may be under scrutiny from regulators, this is a great resource to put towards just seeing what your potential impact will be. And there are also other resources available out there by NIST, not just the framework itself. They also have a glossary. And then one that I find that's particularly helpful is a cross-reference of the NIST framework to other systems like the EU AI Act or the ISO certification. So great resources out there by NIST, as we would expect.
So I'm just curious, because we also had really great conversations around EU AI Act, and there we see classifications of risk, but not necessarily at this point. The law is evolving, an actual demand for an audit. And I'm curious, from both of you, or either of your perspectives, how should professionals think about the AI audit in the context of compliance, what's clearly going to be an important law, the Act, and maybe even the NIST framework, which is quickly becoming the go-to framework to systematically think about these issues?
It's kind of similar, right? Again, going back to privacy laws, where nobody knew how to navigate it. Nobody ever thought that it's going to, we would have to comply with any sort of regulations. And then it became a reality, right? So I guess a lot of people think that AI is just a flash in the pan, that the hype will die down with little to no impact in our daily lives. But it already has an impact in our daily lives, not just as attorneys, but just everybody's life, right? So now with the rapid availability of generative AI and already existing AI tools, these AI systems are becoming ubiquitous, pervasive, and they're becoming more complex and sophisticated. So there needs to be audits. So in there was one recent public instance of an AI bias error, or maybe like a misuse spurred organization to prioritize auditing their AI systems. We're already seeing the EEOC settle its first AI discrimination lawsuit in 2023 as of last year. There's, I think, more things coming about, right? Where there's, companies having to defend themselves. So I think that AI audits are here to stay.
They are definitely here to stay. Kassi, I don't know if you have a point of view, connecting NIST and the EU AI Act and sort of the responsible way to develop AI.
Yeah, I think in some ways, even though the EU AI Act may not specifically require audits, it does create guidelines in their risk categories, the unacceptable, high, medium, and no risk that might still have some transparency issues to be aware of. I think that, again, as companies may consider an AI mapping exercise, categorizing the potential risk in that type of a rubric, that plus the information that NIST has provided, I think can be a great guidepost to companies as they start navigating what resources should we put on AI audit. And we're talking about AI audit globally right now. We're just saying it generally. But, some companies may have 10, 20, 100, a lot of different AI systems. So how do they prioritize what they do? Because it really might need to be focused on one AI system at a time. And so I think maybe looking at those risk levels in the EU AI Act might inform how you prioritize what might get scrutiny first. And then you can go from there. We don't have a single plan of attack for this. It is kind of figuring it out, building the plane as we're flying, right? But I think that can help inform smart planning decisions and also let you start assessing what sort of resources, whether it's monetary budgeting or people resources, to start pulling into these discussions.
Oh, I just love it when lawyers adapt the startup language and start building a flying plane. Let's do it. Let's fly this thing together. Then while we fly it, let's talk about the best practices. Humira, I don't know if you have any thoughts about, clearly, this is developing, this will be changing. But at this moment, in the very beginning, if you were thinking about the top 3 to 5 things, what would they be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've been on notes to my legal self before, and I'm all about engaging internal and external stakeholders. But before that, I think it would be important to define objectives, to start with clear goals for the audit, such as compliance, risk mitigation, performance verification, and an ethical assessment, which would help shape the audit's focus and methodology. I think it's also really important to assemble a multidisciplinary team. This is not something the general counsel or the legal department should do alone. They need to build a team with diverse expertise, including AI technology, ethics, law, and subject matter knowledge. And I know a lot of times, especially as in-house legal lawyers, we're expected to know everything, but we don't. Again, engage with the internal and external stakeholders so everybody's on the same page. Try to figure out what the regulations are, maintain transparent documentation, keep detailed records of the AI system's design, the operations, and design-making processes. Not sure if you wanted to add to that, Kassi.
I'm a big fan of SOPs, and I think that there are many ways that SOPs are going to be very helpful, not only in the context of AI audits, but in successful rollout of maybe generative AI systems being used and helping escalate learning curves. So I think education, like the education of the stakeholders, the people using these tools day in, day out, letting them know what this regulatory landscape is looking like, because there's an AI audit compliance process that we can kick off, but how often different systems might need to be audited. I think those are questions you really have to get in those key stakeholders, and especially the people, again, using those tools. And those people really need to be informed of what's the scrutiny that these systems are starting to get and the risks associated. So if they have something that changes in the use of those AI tools, they can proactively say, hey, we may want to do an assessment right now instead of maybe doing it in January or something like that. So I think education, awareness, and getting that buy-in is particularly important.
I want to follow up with that because I like when Humira said you must admit that you don't know everything. It's sort of like looking in the mirror and admit your mortality. I think it's an important part of being an in-house counsel. Accept what you don't know, which is a lot more than you actually know. And then you actually have a shot of being helpful to yourself and your company. That vulnerability, embracing it, is actually very important. So I'm just wondering, Kassi, how can in-house lawyers, legal teams really ensure transparency and accountability in their practices using this NIST framework that we have been discussing? What are sort of the 3 steps they should be taking as they admit that they don't know everything and then they're mere mortals, so to speak?
Yeah, I think we can look to the ABA model rules and provide some guidance. There is an obligation to have competency, including technology, but that doesn't mean you yourself have to know everything. This is where dialing a friend, dialing a resource that may be able to fill in your knowledge gaps is particularly important. So figure out who in your network of maybe colleagues within the legal department or outside counsel or consultants who can help you build this out and acknowledge, I may not understand this, but this scrutiny is not going away. And the scrutiny that a lot of the attention has come because of generative AI, but it's flowing back to all AI systems broadly. It's something you got to get your arm wrapped around. And if you are saying I'm a very busy chief legal officer or general counsel or AGC, and I'm not going to really be the SME here, at least acknowledge that you need to bring in that person. So bring in that person, building out a plan, and that plan may not be 100% robust. Take it step by step and figure out what's the most important thing for us to do first, and then build on that. And I think the third thing is just keeping your eye, or maybe dialing that friend and having someone help you keep an eye on all of the changes that are happening. This is a very dynamic environment that we're in right now. Laws are constantly getting released. We have regulatory agencies that are, making announcements about how they're keeping an eye on this, in addition to what we're seeing with the EU AI Act. So I think those would be the 3 high points I would start with.
Oh, I love it. So we're coming to the end. I have a few more questions. I do want to cover sort of this AI mapping exercise, the best practices, Humira. It does have this sort of inheritance from data mapping. And I know, Kassi, you have opinions there too, so definitely chime in. And then I want to end with documentation. Kind of let's think about this, because this is kind of important in any audit. So let's start with mapping. Humira, I'm just curious, sort of best practices, the first 3 things you do, or, what would be helpful to actually get on the other side of this exercise and be successful?
So yeah, AI audit is a process like any other process us lawyers follow, right? You have to systematically identify, you have to categorize, and you have to document the various components, the processes, and the data flows within the AI system during this AI audit. The AI mapping is important for conducting an effective audit of the AI systems. And it helps auditors understand how the AI operates, interacts with other systems as well, and processes data. So I guess the first one would be sort of like the component identification. Identify all the components that actually make up the AI system, including the hardware, the software, algorithms, and data sources. I guess as a second step, you would do like the process documentation. You document how the AI system processes data, makes decisions, and learns over time. This involves understanding the algorithms used, the data training processes, and any automated decision-making process. And then doing a data flow analysis. including data, like learning about data inputs, processing, storage, and the outputs. This is also important for assessing data privacy, security, and compliance with regulations. You would need to do a risk identification. That's always my favorite part as being a lawyer with anything, right? You can identify potential risks related to bias, to fairness, transparency, accountability, and security. Do a compliance check. AI mapping helps in checking compliance with relevant laws, regulations, and standards. And this isn't easy, right? Because we don't know what the laws and regulations and standards are out there. But I guess it's a good time to start, right? Because there's not much out there at this point. Transparency and explainability, mapping the AI system to ensure it's transparent. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what mapping is. And maybe next time we'll go through some examples.
Yeah, Kassi, I don't know if you want to supplement that and maybe dive into documentation, because we're at the very end of this conversation, but I do want to make sure we talk about mapping and documentation.
Yeah, I think, whether it's the mapping exercise and you're documenting that, or as you document maybe how, again, generative AI tools are being used. I think documentation is incredibly important from a continuous improvement aspect, which is an element of things like the NIST framework or the ISO certification for AI management systems. So, I think that just realizing that the willy-nilly use of AI out there, in particular, if you're using it in certain ways or with certain groups that might require scrutiny, we're going to have to start using AI in a different way. And that will require audits. It will require documentation. It will probably require validation and just the documentation, even of the validation process. That all is going to be very important. And remediation, again, going to continuous improvement. What have you done there? So it's for people like me who love process and documentation and building out, frameworks, and it's really exciting. And if it's not your jam, then definitely find that person to pair up with. So
that's part of when you look in the mirror, admit what you don't know, admit your mortality. And then in that case, like project management may or may not be my cup of tea every time. And that's when I need help. Absolutely. We covered a lot of ground. This is very much an evolving conversation. It's a moving target, and we are in the beginning of it. So I'm sure this is not the last time we discuss this. I'm sure more to come. But at this point, I do want to make sure that we leave our listeners with one actionable takeaway. Humira, what is yours?
Mine is always sort of dot the I's and cross the T's before you actually spend a lot of time and money to deploy something. So I'm really big on the pre-deployment stage or the before deployment stage. Think about, what is this audit design going to look like? What is the training data going to look like? And preemptively identify and mitigate sort of potential ethical concerns, vulnerabilities, and other flaws before you actually put a system and process in place and have to redo everything.
Okay, what about you, Kassi?
I would say go to NIST and read the framework, look at the glossary, just poke around. You don't have to be an expert of it at the end of the day, but just start to get familiar with that language, because their approach is very similar. It's echoed in the EU AI Act, and it's going to be echoed in other acts that we're seeing or laws. So I would say that, but then I would also say if you're feeling overwhelmed by all of the AI stuff out there, we all feel that way. There's a lot. The news cycle is fast and furious, right? So don't feel discouraged if you feel out of your depth. I will say I feel out of my depth nearly every day, just trying to navigate this, but we persist and we continue. So don't get overwhelmed. We're all in this together.
Accept the overwhelm as a normal state of our lives as we cross the digital transformation divide together and help each other out. Humira and Kassi, thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise and your passion for this area. And I hope everyone had a great time. I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of another thrilling episode on the Notes to My Legal Self AI Insights. We had a fantastic time exploring the fascinating intersection of law and AI with you. But hold on tight, because the adventure doesn't stop here. Stay connected with us on social media to continue the conversation, share your thoughts, and be part of our incredible community of legal enthusiasts. Together, we can inspire, learn, and make a real impact on the world of law and AI. If you enjoyed today's episode, we encourage you to share it with your friends, colleagues, and anyone else who could benefit from the exciting insights we discussed. Let's spread the knowledge and enthusiasm far and wide.